The desert wind swept across Marine Corps Base. 29 palms as 10-year-old Sarah Chen clutched her compact training rifle, its diminutive frame appearing almost toy-like against the backdrop of California's Mojave Desert. The morning sun cast harsh shadows across the Advanced Marksmanship Training Center, where some of the military's most elite shooters came to push the boundaries of long-range precision. Sarah's presence at such a facility seemed as unlikely as finding a hummingbird in a hawk's nest. Colonel Marcus Sterling observed the small figure from his position near the range control tower, his weathered face creased with what could only be described as amused disbelief. At 52, Sterling commanded respect through decades of military service that had taken him from infantry platoons to specialized sniper training programs. His reputation for developing the world's finest long-range marksmen was built on rigid standards and unwavering commitment to proven methods. The sight of a child carrying what appeared to be a scaled-down rifle challenged every assumption he held about serious marksmanship training. Major Rodriguez, Sterling called out to his second-in-command with obvious skepticism in his voice. "Please explain to me why we have what appears to be a 10-year-old girl with a toy gun on my advanced training range." Major Elena Rodriguez approached with the careful diplomacy that came from years of managing Sterling's intense personality while maintaining operational effectiveness. At 38, Rodriguez had earned her position through exceptional performance in military intelligence and logistics coordination, developing skills that made her invaluable for managing complex training operations that required both technical expertise and administrative precision. Sir Rodriguez replied with professional composure. "Miss Chen is here with proper authorization from Pacific Fleet Command. Her father is Gunnery Sergeant James Chen, currently deployed with Reconnaissance Battalion. The family has requested access to advanced training facilities during his absence." Sterling studied the authorization paperwork with growing irritation about bureaucratic decisions that seemed to prioritize political correctness over training center integrity. The documents appeared legitimate, but the idea of allowing civilian dependents to use specialized military equipment designed for elite personnel struck him as fundamentally inappropriate. "Major, this is an advanced marksmanship facility, not a youth summer camp," Sterling declared with authority that made nearby personnel pause their activities to observe what was clearly becoming a confrontational discussion. "That little girl's pop gun doesn't belong on the same range where we train snipers for combat operations." Sarah Chen had been conducting her own assessment of the training facility, while the adults discussed her presence and qualifications. Her small hands moved systematically over her rifle, checking safety mechanisms and sight alignment with movements that suggested familiarity far beyond casual recreational shooting. The weapon she carried was indeed smaller than standard military rifles, but its precision engineering and advanced optics indicated serious equipment rather than recreational gear. "Colonel Sterling," a quiet voice said from behind him. Sarah had approached with the respectful bearing that military children learned early in their development. Recognizing authority while maintaining personal dignity under challenging circumstances, "My rifle may be smaller than yours, but my father taught me that accuracy comes from technique, not equipment size." Sterling turned toward Sarah with the kind of patronizing attention that adults typically reserved for children, who said amusing things during serious conversations. The girl's composed demeanor impressed him despite his skepticism about her claimed abilities. But he remained convinced that childhood enthusiasm couldn't substitute for adult training and combat experience. "Little lady," Sterling said with elaborate patience, "I'm sure your daddy taught you some basic safety rules. But this facility is designed for professionals who need to make shots that save lives in combat situations. Your training rifle is very nice, but it's not appropriate for the kind of work we do here." Master Gunnery Sergeant Patricia Hayes had been observing this exchange while conducting equipment inventory for the day's advanced training sessions. At 45, Hayes possessed a reputation for developing struggling marksmen into competent shooters through patient instruction and systematic skill building. Her experience with diverse learning styles and individual capabilities had taught her to recognize genuine talent regardless of its source or initial presentation. Colonel Hayes interjected diplomatically. Miss Chan's equipment appears to be more sophisticated than it initially looks. That's a custom precision rifle built specifically for smaller framed shooters, with optics that rival our standard sniper scopes. Sterling examined Sarah's rifle more carefully, noting technical features that he had initially dismissed due to its compact size. The weapon's construction quality and advanced sighting systems suggested serious investment in precision shooting capabilities rather than recreational equipment designed for casual training or entertainment purposes. Impressive hardware, Sterling acknowledged grudgingly. But adult equipment doesn't make a child capable of adult performance. Long-range marksmanship requires physical strength, mental discipline, and experience that can't be developed through weekend hobby shooting. Sarah's response came with calm confidence that surprised everyone present, who had expected either intimidation or childish defensiveness when confronted by military authority and institutional skepticism about her claimed capabilities. Colonel, would you be willing to observe a demonstration of what my father taught me about precision shooting? Sarah asked with straightforward sincerity. I understand your concerns about training facility use, but I believe performance speaks louder than assumptions about age or equipment. The challenge was delivered with such mature professionalism that Sterling found himself caught between institutional protocol and curiosity about what this unusual situation might reveal about civilian training methods and natural talent development in unexpected contexts. Miss Chen, Sterling replied after several moments of consideration. I suppose a brief demonstration wouldn't hurt, provided we maintain proper safety protocols. But I want you to understand that this is a courtesy, not a validation of your claimed abilities. Captain Michael Torres had been preparing targets and range equipment for the day's scheduled training when he overheard the discussion about Sarah's proposed demonstration. As range safety officer, Torres possessed responsibility for ensuring that all activities followed established safety protocols, while maintaining flexibility necessary to accommodate unusual training situations. Colonel Torres said respectfully, if we're conducting an evaluation, we should establish clear parameters for success and failure. What distance and target specifications would constitute meaningful demonstration? Sterling considered the question while studying Sarah's compact rifle and obvious determination to prove her capabilities under professional scrutiny. His expectation remained that a brief demonstration would expose the limitations of civilian training while providing educational value about the differences between recreational shooting and military marksmanship requirements. Standard qualification distance, Sterling decided. 300 yards, stationary target, 5 rounds for group measurement. If Miss Chen can achieve expert qualification standards, I'll acknowledge that her training has some merit. Sarah nodded acceptance of these parameters while conducting her own environmental assessment of wind conditions, lighting, and range setup that would affect shooting accuracy. Her systematic approach to evaluating external factors impressed the military professionals present, who recognized behaviors that reflected serious training rather than childhood enthusiasm. Colonel, Sarah said with growing confidence, I accept your challenge, but I'd like to request permission to demonstrate what my father taught me about advanced techniques after completing basic qualification. The mention of advanced techniques drew skeptical glances from personnel who understood the complexity of long-range shooting under challenging conditions. Sterling's expression showed amusement at what he assumed was childish overconfidence about abilities that hadn't been demonstrated under any circumstances. Advanced techniques, Sterling repeated with obvious doubt. Miss Chen, Advanced marksmanship involves distances and conditions that challenge experienced military snipers. I think we should focus on basic qualification before discussing anything more complex. Sergeant First Class David. Kim had been listening to this exchange while setting up equipment for long-range training that would test even experienced marksman's capabilities. Kim's specialized knowledge of extreme distance shooting made him valuable for evaluating claims about advanced marksmanship that exceeded standard qualification requirements. "Sir," Kim said carefully, "the long-range course is configured for distances up to 3,000 yards today. If Miss Chen wants to demonstrate advanced techniques, the equipment and targets are available." Sterling's laughter echoed across the desert training facility as he processed Kim's suggestion that a 10-year-old girl might attempt shots that challenged elite military snipers under optimal conditions. The idea seemed so absurd that he found himself wondering whether this entire situation was some kind of elaborate practical joke. "Sergeant Kim," Sterling said with theatrical amusement, "I think Miss Chen should focus on proving she can hit a barn door at 300 yards before we start discussing miracle shots at impossible distances." Sarah's calm response to Sterling's mockery demonstrated emotional regulation that impressed Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a sports psychologist who had been documenting stress responses and performance optimization techniques for military marksmanship programs. The girl's composure under public ridicule suggested psychological maturity that exceeded her chronological age. "Colonel Sterling," Sarah said with respectful persistence, "my father served as a reconnaissance sniper before his current assignment. He taught me that long-range shooting isn't about miracle shots. It's about understanding physics, environmental factors, and systematic technique application." The technical sophistication of Sarah's response drew attention from military professionals, who recognized that her knowledge exceeded casual exposure to shooting terminology. Major Rodriguez found herself reconsidering initial assumptions about civilian training capabilities and the potential value of observing Sarah's actual performance rather than dismissing her claims without evidence. Sterling studied Sarah's face, seeing in her expression the same focused determination that he had observed in elite military marksmen who possessed exceptional natural ability combined with systematic training. Despite his skepticism about her age and equipment, something in her bearing suggested competence that deserved evaluation rather than dismissal. "Miss Chen," Sterling said with authority that made his words carry institutional weight, "if you want to demonstrate advanced techniques, you'll need to prove basic competence first. 300 yards, expert qualification standards. Succeed, we'll discuss longer distances." As Sarah moved toward the firing position with movements that reflected practiced familiarity with range procedures, Sterling positioned himself where he could observe both her shooting technique and target results. His expectation remained that reality would quickly deflate childish pretensions, while providing educational value about the differences between fantasy and professional capability. The morning desert air had stilled to barely a whisper, creating ideal conditions that would eliminate environmental excuses for poor performance. What happened next would determine whether Sarah Chen's claimed abilities represented genuine skill or childhood imagination that would be exposed by the unforgiving reality of precision. Marksmanship under professional scrutiny, the sound of her compact rifle's safety being disengaged seemed to echo across the training facility with unusual authority, as though the weapon itself understood the significance of the demonstration about to unfold. In a few moments, Sterling's confident assumptions about civilian limitations would be challenged by performance that exceeded even his extensive experience with exceptional military talent. The silence that descended over the Advanced Marksmanship Training Center carried the weight of institutional skepticism as Sarah Chen settled into her shooting position behind the compact rifle. Through her advanced optics, the target at 300 yards appeared crisp and clear, its scoring rings standing out against the desert backdrop like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. The morning sun had climbed higher, creating perfect visibility conditions that would eliminate any environmental excuses for poor performance. "Take your time, Miss Chen," Captain Torres said quietly from his position as range safety officer. "Remember, we're evaluating technique as much as accuracy." Sarah's breathing had already settled into the controlled rhythm her father had drilled into her during countless training sessions in their backyard range. The four-count cycle that Gunnery Sergeant James Chen had learned in Marine reconnaissance training and passed down to his daughter like a family tradition. Inhale fully, exhale halfway, hold. Squeezed out the first shot from her compact rifle, cracked across the desert with surprising authority, immediately followed by the distinctive ping of a bullet striking steel. Through his spotting scope, Sergeant Kim observed the target with professional assessment, his expression shifting from polite interest to genuine surprise. "Dead center bullseye," Kim announced, his voice carrying clearly across the range. Perfect placement, textbook execution. Colonel Sterling had positioned himself where he could watch both Sarah's technique and the target results, expecting to witness the kind of scattered shots that would validate his assumptions about children attempting adult activities. The single, centered hit was impressive, but hardly conclusive evidence that couldn't be attributed to beginner's luck under favorable conditions. "One shot proves nothing," Sterling declared with confident dismissal. "Anyone can get lucky once with proper equipment and ideal weather conditions." What followed silenced every skeptical comment and dismissive prediction that had been voiced. Since Sarah's arrival at the facility, her next 4 shots struck within inches of the first, creating a grouping so tight it appeared to be a single enlarged hole in the target's center ring. The precision was so consistent that several observers initially suspected equipment malfunction. 5 rounds, approximately half-inch group at 300 yards. Captain Torres announced after confirming measurements through multiple optical systems. "That exceeds expert qualification standards by any measure I've seen." The announcement created ripples of conversation among military personnel, who'd gathered to witness what they expected to be a child's embarrassing failure. Master Gunnery Sergeant Hayes found herself staring at the target display with professional amazement that she made no attempt to conceal. Sterling's confident demeanor showed the first cracks as he processed results that directly contradicted his expectations and public predictions. The colonel found himself in the uncomfortable position of watching a 10-year-old girl demonstrate shooting abilities that exceeded those of most personnel under his command. "Impressive shooting," Sterling acknowledged grudgingly, "but 300 yards is basic qualification distance. Real long-range marksmanship begins where most shooters reach their limitations." Sarah lifted her head from the rifle scope for the first time since beginning her demonstration, looking towards Sterling with calm acceptance that suggested she had expected this escalation. Her composed demeanor under continued skepticism impressed Dr. Walsh, who had been documenting psychological responses to increasing pressure. Colonel Sarah said with growing confidence, "Would you like me to demonstrate what my father taught me about extreme range shooting?" The question hung in the desert air like a challenge that Sterling couldn't ignore without appearing to back down from his own institutional authority. His pride wouldn't allow retreat from confrontation he had initiated, regardless of mounting evidence that his assumptions might be fundamentally flawed. "Miss Chen," Sterling replied with forced authority, "extreme range shooting involves distances that challenge our most experienced snipers. We're talking about environmental factors, ballistic calculations, and technical precision that requires years of development." Sergeant Kim had been preparing the long-range course while listening to this exchange, understanding that institutional credibility was now at stake regardless of Sarah's performance. The equipment represented the military's most advanced targeting systems, designed for shots that pushed the boundaries of human capability. Sir Kim reported, The 3,000-yard course is active with moving targets. Environmental monitoring shows favorable conditions for extreme range work. Sterling's expression showed disbelief at the suggestion that anyone would seriously consider allowing a child to attempt shots that challenge the elite military snipers under optimal conditions. The distance involved physics and skill requirements. That seemed impossible for someone Sarah's age and experience level. 3,000 yards with moving targets. Sterling repeated slowly. Sergeant, that's beyond the capability range of most qualified snipers. The ballistic calculations alone require advanced mathematics and environmental compensation that takes years to master. Sarah's response demonstrated knowledge that impressed everyone present who possessed sufficient technical background to evaluate its accuracy and complexity. Colonel, my father taught me that 3,000-yard shots require bullet drop compensation of approximately 35 feet. Wind drift calculations based on multiple environmental zones and timing predictions. For target movement patterns, Sarah said without hesitation. The mathematics are challenging, but systematic application of proven formulas makes the shots predictable rather than miraculous. The casual precision of her ballistic knowledge drew sharp attention from military professionals who recognized that Sarah's understanding far exceeded recreational training or casual instruction. Major Rodriguez found herself reconsidering every assumption about civilian capability development and family military training programs. Miss Chen, Sterling said carefully, recognizing that he was approaching a moment that would either validate his skepticism or fundamentally challenge his understanding of exceptional talent. If you believe you can make such a shot, I'm willing to observe your attempt, but understand that failure at this distance would be completely expected and nothing to be embarrassed about. As the group moved toward the extreme range facility, Sarah walked beside Master Gunnery Sergeant Hayes with obvious eagerness to learn from someone who understood advanced marksmanship principles. The 3,000-yard range stretched across a natural valley between desert ridges. Its target system designed to test the absolute limits of rifle accuracy and shooter capability. Miss Chen Hayes said with professional interest, shooting requires different techniques than standard qualification distances. The target will be barely visible even through high-powered optics, and environmental factors become exponentially more complex. My father explained that extreme range shooting is 90% mental calculation and 10% physical execution. Sarah replied with mature understanding that contrasted sharply with her youthful appearance. Success depends on systematic analysis rather than instinctive shooting. The moving target system at 3,000 yards appeared impossibly small through even the most advanced spotting scopes available to the facility. The mechanized targets moved at varying speeds across the valley floor, creating additional complexity that challenged the most experienced marksmen under ideal conditions. Colonel Sterling watched Sarah conduct her environmental assessment with systematic attention to detail that impressed him despite his continuing skepticism about her actual capabilities. Her methodical approach to evaluating shooting conditions suggested training that went far beyond casual instruction or recreational experience. Wind speed varies between zones, Sarah observed while studying environmental indicators across the extended range. I'll need to compensate for approximately 12 inches of drift, plus 37 feet of bullet drop, with a 2-second lead time for target movement. The technical accuracy of her calculations impressed Sergeant Kim, who had been documenting environmental conditions using electronic measurement devices that confirmed Sarah's visual assessments were correct within acceptable margins of error, as Sarah settled into position behind her compact rifle, now equipped with additional stability equipment for extreme range work. The assembled observers fell silent with anticipation that mixed growing respect with institutional disbelief about what they were about to witness. The shot that followed was preceded by nearly 30 seconds of microscopic adjustments as Sarah calculated environmental factors, and target movement patterns with systematic precision that impressed everyone present. When her rifle finally fired, the sound seemed to echo across the entire desert valley with authority that suggested something significant had just occurred. Through the spotting scope, the moving target appeared to stumble slightly before continuing its mechanical path across the valley floor. For several seconds, nobody spoke as observers confirmed what seemed impossible to believe. Direct hit on moving target at 3,000 yards. Sergeant Kim announced, his voice carrying a note of professional reverence typically reserved for witnessing genuinely historic performance. Confirmed impact, center mass placement. The silence that followed this announcement was profound and uncomfortable as everyone present processed the reality that they had just witnessed a 10-year-old girl accomplish something that most elite military snipers would consider extraordinarily challenging under optimal conditions. Colonel Sterling stared through his binoculars with an expression that suggested someone watching their entire worldview collapse in real time. The confident predictions he had made about civilian incompetence and childish fantasies now seemed not just wrong, but embarrassingly ignorant of capabilities that exceeded his own institutional experience. "Outstanding shooting, Miss Chen," Major Rodriguez said with genuine professional admiration. "Your performance demonstrates that exceptional talent can emerge from unexpected sources and deserves recognition regardless of traditional assumptions." About capability development, Sarah lifted her head from the rifle scope with satisfaction that came from proving abilities under the most challenging conditions possible, while demonstrating respect for the institutional expertise that had provided her with this opportunity for advancement. "Thank you, Major," Sarah replied with mature appreciation. "My father always taught me that individual excellence gains meaning through service to others and contribution to missions larger than personal achievement." Dr. Walsh approached Sarah's position with obvious professional interest in documenting psychological factors that had enabled such exceptional performance under extreme pressure and public scrutiny. "Miss Chen," Dr. Walsh said respectfully, "your stress management and technical execution under these conditions suggest capabilities that could benefit military marksmanship programs significantly. Would you be interested in sharing your training methods with other developing marksmen?" The question represented validation that exceeded Sarah's most optimistic expectations when she first requested access to advanced training facilities to maintain skills her father had developed during his absence on deployment. Colonel Sterling walked toward Sarah with an expression that mixed professional respect with personal acknowledgement of fundamental errors in judgment about civilian capabilities and family military training programs. "Miss Chen," Sterling said with authority that now carried respect rather than dismissal, "I owe you an apology for my initial assessment of your abilities. Your performance today has been genuinely exceptional by any standard I've witnessed during my career." The acknowledgement from someone who had initially ridiculed her capabilities provided closure that validated not just Sarah's individual achievement, but her father's systematic training methods and dedication to developing her natural abilities through patient instruction and systematic skill building as the desert sun began its descent toward the western mountains. Sarah Chen had transformed from a dismissed child with a toil-like rifle into a formally recognized contributor whose abilities would influence military marksmanship training while honoring her family's tradition of exceptional service and dedication to excellence. The compact rifle that had initially drawn laughter and skepticism now represented proof that exceptional talent could emerge from unexpected sources and achieve results that challenged institutional assumptions about capability, training, and the diverse pathways through which military excellence could be identified and developed. Colonel Sterling's laughter had been replaced by professional respect for abilities that exceeded even his extensive experience with elite military personnel, demonstrating that true marksmanship excellence transcended age, equipment size, and traditional expectations about who could achieve extraordinary results under the most demanding conditions possible.
Hit subscribe